have is how to get quality sleep around a not so perfect schedule. And I'm just going to go ahead and introduce myself really quick. So I'm Katie Alton. I've been working for Samsung and EXOS for about a year now. I think I was on campus for about 6 months before the COVID happened. So I'm actually a native of Gilroy, California, and I've been out of state slash out of country for quite a while. Relocated to Montana and then decided I really don't like being cold. So I'm back here in California. I grew up playing sports, riding horses, and I've moved into racing my mountain bike for a local team or in San Mateo. Um, my background in strength and conditioning is probably when I started studying in high school, a little bit of sports medicine, and then I got more into my career in Montana, working at a private facility as well as Montana State Athletics with a variety of different teams. So kind of getting to know different needs and different athletes and all that good stuff. So since I've been at home, I've been working on mostly promoting EXOS at home content and making sure that I can provide some tips and strategies on nutrition and recovery and workouts. So it's not just about physical health. It's definitely keeping stress down, supporting our immune system, and really being able to stay healthy during this definitely difficult year for all of us. And what else I've been working on is going to be my precision nutrition certification. So not only learning a little bit more about nutrition and kind of proper fueling, but how do we develop habits that can be sustainable and help us make better choices for long term versus irrational decisions for short term. Also, the functional movement screen certification I've been working on, and this is a screen that I've actually used a lot at Montana State and my previous employer. And now just kind of diving into finer details about it and what else I can use with the knowledge I get based off of assessing any sort of dysfunctional movement pattern that someone might have and how to help them correct those. And I'll finish with a fun fact. I've traveled to 30 different countries before I turned 30 years old. So the most recent picture you're going to see on your left here is obviously with fall. Here's a big pumpkin I found. And then on the right is going to be in Chamonix, France, which is one of my favorite cities. Yeah, love France. Here we go. So getting back on topic with EXOS performance. So we've got our 4 pillars of performance, and that's going to be mindset, nutrition, movement, and recovery. And what I love about the sleep presentation is that this actually covers all 4 pillars because without quality sleep, we really can't be in a good mindset, or it's very difficult to be. Our nutrition habits probably aren't the best if we're sleep deprived. Our movement and performance is not going to be as good. And our recovery is obviously not going to be taking place if we're sleep deprived or if we're struggling with getting quality sleep consistently. So, a little background before I get into the sleep basics is I actually watched a continuing education video with Coach Jair out of EXOS Performance in Phoenix. And I really like some of the points that he brought up about sleeping habits and kind of different types of people and how they can work around different schedules and all that. And I reached out to him and he actually gave me a video from Michael Bruce, who's quote unquote a sleep doctor, and just learning about the topics that he brought up, I thought was really interesting and super useful for people, especially working in the tech industry, because we don't all have the same perfect schedule, and sometimes it's just not achievable. So how do we get good quality sleep while also doing our job and living our life without trying to make something work that's not going to? So moving on, I'm just going to have a couple stats here. 40% of the population in the US is sleep deprived. 11:21 p.m. is the average bedtime of American sleepers. And here's a big one. $411 billion is the annual cost from sleep deprivation to the United States. And this can be looked at either from a point of productivity, like how much work is actually getting done when we're trying to work on a very sleep deprived mind. And also in healthcare, how many things are we treating health conditions due to poor sleep? So it's a really big one. And when we look into a lot of conditions, a lot of them can actually be fixed with an actual healthy sleeping pattern. So some sleeping fundamentals here. Let's talk about sleep drive. So what's that? The accumulation of adenosine. Adenosine is what makes us feel sleepy. So as that builds up in our body, usually later at night, that's what triggers us to want to go to sleep. And there might still be some in our body as we wake up. So, fun fact, caffeine actually has the same molecular structure as adenosine, but this is what inhibits adenosine from getting into our blood system. Once that caffeine wears off, then the adenosine just bursts the pipes through and floods our system. And that's what we would consider a caffeine crash. So when the caffeine wears off and we're even more sleepy, feeling even more sleepier than we were, we're definitely feeling that caffeine crash. So moving on to a sleep rhythm, this is going to be our sleep cycle and how many cycles we have. So on average, a sleep cycle is 90 minutes, and we usually go through 5 cycles. And this will total to a 7.5 hour sleep, which has already kind of busted the myth of you need a full 8 hours to be healthy. So it's not quite as accurate. And a little bit of what happens in that 90 minutes, because it's not just closing your eyes for 7.5 hours, it's what's actually happening while you're sleeping. And in this cycle, we've got light and then deep and REM. And the two most important are deep sleep and REM, which is rapid eye movement. So deep sleep is going to be physically restorative. It increases your growth hormone. And this is what makes us think, wow, I feel great. When I wake up in the morning and I've had a lot of deep sleep, you usually feel great. You feel recovered. You don't wake up still feeling like our body is tired. REM sleep is going to be the mentally restorative. And this is important because this is when we move information from our short term to our long term memory. So our brain is actively starting to be able to download things, if you will. So if we're not getting enough REM cycles, then that's really going to work with kind of our cognitive functioning and remembering things and really staying a lot more alert and focused and all that. And I've got a fun fact. The brain actually consumes just as much glucose or burns just as much calories as being awake when you're in your REM cycle because you're actively working, but you're asleep. So I thought that was pretty cool. Oops, I almost kicked the chair over. I don't know if you heard that. Anyways, so with that, we can kind of move into sleep chronotypes. And this is what I thought was the most interesting about this presentation that I watched because it really delves into the fact that every single human being is different and we all have different sleeping patterns, and some work for one person, it might not work for another. And so how can we adjust our sleep accordingly? So here's our 4 chronotypes. We've got the lion, which accounts for 15% of the population. They're usually the early morning optimists. They have a medium sleep drive. They're go-getters, leaders, and COOs. They tend to make a plan and stick to it. They socially don't do well. And how I translated that is that some people don't like to be around early birds in the morning. If you are not a morning person, then there might be a little bit of confrontation there. But anyways, moving on to the bear, that's going to be 55% of the population. These guys are solar sleepers with a healthy sleep drive. They're considered to be the glue for society, getting work done. Usually extroverted and open-minded. And most of society is built around their sleeping schedule. So the majority of our population are going to be the bear chronotype. Moving into the wolf, which is 15% of the population, these guys are going to be the late night creative and out of the box thinkers. They crave novelty and they can be big risk takers and also very artistic. Uh, they don't follow patterns, but they make it look simple. So maybe the lifestyle they live of staying up late, getting things done, and then appearing to be fully functioning the next morning. Some other people, it's just not their cup of tea, and that's not happening. So the next one and the last one is going to be the dolphin, and that accounts for 10% of the population. This group is going to have often erratic sleep schedules. They're going to have a short sleep drive, but crave long bouts of sleep. They might be self diagnosed as insomniacs. They're usually highly intelligent and tend to be obsessive compulsive. These are the kind of people that never stop fixing a project when it's fine. They can be a little bit more anxious and fast talkers. So those are our 4 chronotypes. So kind of after reading this, think about what your sleeping schedule is like and what works for you. And we'll move on to a couple cool things that we can now plug in knowing this information. But before we do that, let's cover a little bit of info about caffeine and alcohol. So with caffeine and alcohol, they've obviously both got different effects. So I'm going to focus on caffeine first. So let's think about when we wake up in the morning. Cortisol and adrenaline are 2 natural hormones in our body that want to wake us up. We've gotten up and now the cortisol and the adrenaline are flowing. And if the first thing we do is have caffeine, the caffeine isn't going to touch the effects of these hormones. So usually this is going to leave us going to that second or third or fourth cup of coffee before feeling like we're actually awake. This is not good for our system and having a healthy wake up, if you will. And I'll touch more on that in a second. So I'm going to move into sensitivity. So there's always that person who says, I can have a cup of coffee at dinner and go right to sleep. We all love, or some of us love that cappuccino after dinner and have no problems going to bed after that. And this kind of ties in with the next one. There's falling asleep and then there's quality sleep. So when we look at alcohol and sleep, there's falling asleep versus passing out. And for some, we have some other tools that we use to help us fall asleep. But what's actually happening within falling asleep and getting up the next morning are 2 completely different things. Are we getting those 90-minute cycles? Are we getting at least 5 cycles? Or are we just light sleeping the whole time, but at least we're not disturbed waking up? There is quite a big difference there. So using that information, we've got strategic drinking for chronotypes. So now going back to our chronotypes and what kind of time frame, what you fell under for these 4 different animals, this is when to caffeinate. So if we look at the lion, we've got 8 to 10 a.m. and 1 to 2 p.m. The bear, we've got 9:30 to 11:30 a.m. and 1:30 to 3:30 p.m. The wolf, 12 p.m. to 2 p.m. and no caffeine after 2 p.m. And then lastly, the dolphin, 8:30 to 10 a.m. and 1 to 2 p.m. This might be the best time for your caffeine to be the most efficient based on when you're getting up in the morning and giving yourself enough time to wake up before getting coffee. And when I say that, what's enough time? Consider waiting at least 90 minutes after waking up before having any caffeine. So this is any sort of black tea, caffeinated beverage, coffee. I myself am quite a big coffee snob, so I love just the whole act of making coffee and enjoying it first thing in the morning. But consider starting with a glass of water first. And I'll raise you one more, getting 15 minutes of direct sunlight if possible. So a couple things are happening here. We're getting water back into our system and rehydrating, and we're letting adrenaline and cortisol do its job. And then the sunlight for 15 minutes is going to turn off the melatonin. So the other hormone or chemical that makes us feel sleepy and wants to go to sleep, that's going to get shut off once our body starts getting natural sunlight in and boosting our natural ability to wake up. Another thing to consider is that caffeine has a half-life of 6 to 8 hours. So when you hear people saying avoiding caffeine after 2 p.m., what they mean is staying within that threshold is going to help you fall asleep and get those quality cycles or sleep patterns in without still having caffeine in your system and reducing the amount of sleep quality. Another thing you can try is called a nap a latte. And this isn't for everyday use, but sometimes if we're just tired and we need a little bit extra help, we've got a lot of meetings, we've got a lot of stuff to do, but we can spare 25 minutes. Try this out. Here are the steps. You're going to pour 6 ounces of drip coffee into a cup. You're going to add 3 ice cubes just to cool it down, and then you're just going to slam it. So just drink it as quick as you can. It's not a sit down with a friend kind of thing. And then you're going to hit snooze for 25 minutes. So if you can just lay down, shut your eyes, plug into some relaxing music for no more than 25 minutes, wake up, and you're ready to go. So falling asleep quickly is going to give time for the caffeine to kick in once you wake up. And I guess miracles happen. So you could definitely try this out and see how it goes. In the presentation, he was very excited about it, and I think that I have tried that not intentionally in the past, and I actually felt great. So there we are. All right, so moving into alcohol. So chronotypes and when to consume alcohol. So we're looking at those 4 animals again, and based off of that kind of trait, here are the best times. So the lion, 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. The bear, 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. The wolf, 7 to 9 p.m. And the dolphin, 6 to 8 p.m. And things to consider is we've got a tolerance rhythm. So we've got a natural happy hour inside us that's from 4 to 6 p.m. So if you're used to having that drink with a friend after work and then suddenly go to a Sunday brunch and get the mimosas at 11 o'clock, your body is going to have a lot different of a response than it did at those later evening drinks. So before you have your second one, just realize that there'll definitely be a different sort of feeling or tolerance, if you will. And then going back to those times, I'm just going to scroll back really quick, is just understanding that these are definitely guidelines, and this is still considering 1 drink per hour. And if you look at the time frames, you might think, well, that's not a lot of drinks that I'm used to. And just keep in the back of your head that this is a tool that you can use to re-strategize a little bit of your habits without cutting yourself off completely. Because let's face it, we like to have a drink with our friends sometimes and enjoy ourselves. And what's a little bit more sustainable than either quitting something cold and bringing that habit back almost double or worse than how you started, or just making smaller steps to something that's a little bit more achievable so that you're more aware of what can help you still get quality sleep and not completely sidetrack or knock you off proper sleep patterns later down the road. So just keeping an eye on those little things the next time you kind of head outside for some outdoor drinking, if you will, because that's what's open right now. Hangover hacks. So our next topic, simple steps to avoid a hangover. And this is kind of tying into something that I just said. So drink a glass of water for each beverage, alcoholic beverage that you have. And just remember, we are having that 1 beverage per hour, right? Before you do go to bed, consider drinking a coconut water, and stop drinking 3 hours before you go to sleep. So that way we can get back into that cycle where our body's naturally going to sleep. Some people feel like alcohol does help them fall asleep, but again, we're falling asleep, not passing out. We want to have quality sleep cycles. And then in the morning, supplementing magnesium and vitamin B, because that is something that alcohol does pull out of your blood system and usually is the cause of headaches and all that fun stuff that comes with a hangover. And then a fun fact, you lose an average of 1 liter of fluid in your sleep from the humidity in your breath. So every night you're losing at least 1 liter of water just from sleeping. So if we do the math, we're drinking a few drinks uh, one night, and alcohol is a natural diuretic, so we're losing a bit of fluid there. We don't have any water before we go to sleep. We lose another liter of fluid in our sleep, and when we wake up, the first thing we want to do is have coffee, which is also a diuretic. So just consider before kind of ending up in this slippery slide of dehydration and just feeling terrible, there are some steps that you can take to reduce this or just make it not happen. Sleeping on a plane and jet lag. So that's my next topic. And I know there's a lot less travel right now, but consider this for your next business trip, either to Korea or across the States or a family vacation, anything you're doing that's airport and plane related. So a few things, equipment, consider bringing your own eye shades, earplugs, and a pillow. If you're going on an all-nighter, bringing your own slippers, toothbrush, hairbrush, and then know what music relaxes you or if you can meditate. Working on that, those are great tools. Some people suggest bringing all of those pieces of equipment that you know you're happy with versus relying on what the airport might provide. The next one, and I thought this was really cool, is seatguru.com. What that is a website where you could look up your flight number, and this will look into what plane you're taking and can recommend the most quiet parts of the plane or give you an idea of where the most ideal place is to sit on the plane. So I think that's pretty cool to look into if you have the ability to choose your seat if you're going that route. Definitely worth checking out. And then just note time zone changes. So consider jet lag 1 day for every time zone change. But again, this is something using a couple tools in our toolbox we can reduce. So if we're using melatonin on the plane, using our eye shades, earplugs, taking naps in the airport, being awake when we need to be awake, getting enough sunlight, maybe in your transfers or on the plane itself. We can have little strategies to reduce the amount of days or time that you are jet lagged. So that's another thing, considering making a few small adjustments to make that a lot easier for your traveling. What are the benefits of a good sleep? So, with all making this huge fuss about everything, about getting good sleep, what is the point? So, I've just got a big block of benefits of sleep, and the ones that I really like the most or can definitely notice personally is going to be the better cognitive functioning and the improved reaction time. So waking up when you know you just haven't slept well and you just feel fuzzy, it's a lot harder to just make simple decisions, have communication with other people and whatnot. With a good night's sleep, you just feel on top of it and ready to go. And that's not something that you should just think of as being lucky or just a one-off. It's something that can be created to happen every single day. And the improved reaction time definitely helps if I'm tired and riding my mountain bike. Usually, if I'm not awake and staying focused, it does not end well. So, getting a good night's sleep is very important and a priority for me when I know I have some upcoming important rides to get done. So now I'm going to move into sleeping tips and tricks. So simple strategies to get great sleep, not just falling asleep, but effective sleep that will improve your health. And these are all steps that you can take one at a time. It doesn't have to be perfect every single day, as long as we're making an effort and choosing a couple things to work on each week. And that even goes back into the hours that we're sleeping at night, the time that we're having coffee, all that. The first one, keep a glass of room temperature water at your bedside table. This will help you if the first thing in the morning that's right next to you is that tall glass of water. Get your hydration started right off the bat. And this is going to tie back into waiting that 90 minutes before you have that first drink of a caffeinated beverage. Uh, and then even spend some time standing in some sunlight if you can, to naturally turn off that melatonin tap and let your body wake itself up. And that cup of coffee will do wonders in just one cup, not four. So the next one is going to be staying physically active. And what what Michael Bruce was saying was some people really do like to work out before bed because it helps them sleep. And that's great. But that kind of, again, ties into helping you fall asleep. But what's the quality of your sleep? And I'm not saying don't work out later in the day. It's just recommended to not work out at least 4 hours before you're planning on going to sleep. So again, if that is something that you can avoid, then that's great. If the only time of your day just to get your workout in is a few hours before you're expected to go to sleep, it's just keeping in mind that there are ways that can help you improve your sleep, but you haven't ruined your pattern just by doing that. It's just something to be aware of. Stop drinking caffeine at 2 p.m. And sometimes for me, this can definitely be difficult just because I love coffee, but I can definitely tell how my sleep was the next morning because I've got a Whoop strap. I don't know if you guys are using sleep trackers, but you can definitely use an app that tells you how many cycles you're actually having and what stages of sleep you're getting into. And I can definitely notice that if I've had caffeine or I've had alcohol close to going to sleep, my recovery, i.e. my sleep quality, is terrible. So just something to be aware of is you might not feel that bad waking up the next morning if you've just had a couple drinks or some caffeine late in the day. But just note that the quality can be hindered. So next one, keep a notepad next to your bed. So the last thing you want to do is just be in bed, remember some task that you have to do tomorrow and you don't want to forget it. So you just lay there kind of nervous about it. And for me, I also get a lot of great ideas while I'm just laying in bed. So write it down and then you don't have to worry about forgetting it. It's right there. You can just have peace of mind and leave it alone and go back to sleep. Easy peasy. The next one is going to be wake up at the same time every day, even on the weekends. So in order to keep your sleep rhythm consistent, which is when your body kind of naturally expects to go to bed, if it knows its routine every day, then it's a lot easier to get falling asleep faster and getting into those sleep cycles. So as much as we want to sleep in or maybe sometimes even wake up super early on the weekends, just remember, try to keep it somewhat consistent. And then the last one is taking an hour to relax before sleeping. And what I like is that you can segment this into different time frames. So 20 minutes of hygiene, you're brushing your teeth, you're washing your face, you're doing what you need to do. 20 minutes of reading or journaling, and that can tie into keeping a notepad next to your bed, and 20 minutes of meditation or white noise or relaxing music or just those sound effects that come on like Google Home or something like that. And taking that full hour to just wind down and keeping that pattern consistent can definitely help you fall asleep faster and better every night. So in summary, thank you for listening to this presentation. Again, these are all just guidelines, and I feel like it's very realistic instead of just saying, go to bed at 9, get your 8 hours. If you can't do that, what's the point? There are a lot of strategies now that we can take depending on what time of day we do things, how much of caffeine or alcohol we get, and how we break down our night. So thank you so much for listening to this. If you need to reach out, my email